Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day?
Hello everyone, my name is Dean. Let's talk crypto. This is where you subscribe for daily Bitcoin updates and technical analysis. We track the price of Bitcoin as a proxy for the cryptocurrency markets at large. Today is August 20th, 2025. And word on the street, at least in the Twitter streets, is that we've bottomed, all right? All the influencers are talking about it, not all of them, but most of them, many of them are talking about how we've bottomed. This is it. Get ready for face melting returns, Bitcoin, Ethereum. And not only did we bottom, but if you missed this, you don't know what you're talking about. So we're going to look at Bitcoin as per usual. We're going to look at Ethereum, and we're also going to investigate briefly Bitmine. Bitmine, if you don't know, is Ethereum's MicroStrategy. Okay, we're going to look at Bitmine and its chairman, Tom Lee, his claims as to, what we're doing in the market right now. So if all that sounds interesting to you, then watch until the very end. Hope everyone's having a great day. Let's get into it. Let's start with Bitcoin as per usual. All right, Bitcoin. We're at a bottom, right? Look, on the intraday time frame. Let's start with that. You see a few green candles and people get really excited. Let's zoom out for just a second. So, we're starting with the top here, all-time high, 124,529 on this chart, okay? That is something that happened about 7 days ago, 6 days, 20 hours ago, okay? That's a trend. That's a downtrend, okay? So people saying we've bottomed, what does bottom mean? Bottom doesn't mean, we're kind of hanging out in some counter-corrective move. Bottoming means you found demand, you found a demand zone. This is it, support. We don't expect to go any lower. So that is a very, very bold claim for what this price action is showing. Just on the 4-hourly time frame, again, you haven't even broken resistance of this 3-day channel in blue. All right? Again, you have trends and counter trends. This is the trend, and that's undisputable. This is a counter trend. That is a counter trend. That is a counter trend. This is another counter trend. This is one of many counter trends we've experienced since we topped out 6 or 7 days ago. All right, that's the first thing. So before calling for a bottom, at the very least, break the resistance of the 3-day channel you've been in, downtrend, the 3-day falling wedge, 3-day descending channel that you've been in first in Bitcoin, okay? And a break would look like what? You break channels by breaking at the midline, breaking up past the midline, and then breaking through, and then retesting the top of the channel, and then leaving the boundaries of the channel. So we would want to see something like that. All right. The second thing is not even changing time frames, just staying well within the intraday 4-hourly time frame. Remember what happened just a few short days ago. A few short days ago, Bitcoin tried to make a high at 123. Failed, came down, grabbed more liquidity, tried again, failed again, tried a third time, failed a third time. That resulted on the higher time frames in what we see as a double top. Subsequent to that, you got your 6 or 7 day drawdown. So this 6 to 7 day drawdown can be seen in context of this larger M top. Okay, and that M top is a classic bearish reversal pattern, one of many. Okay, this is a classic bearish reversal pattern where the price is telling you it's not so good for bullish continuation. It's more likely to reverse to the downside. Okay, now what happens at the neckline of these bearish reversal patterns? If you invalidate them, what do they look like? And if they continue, what do they look like? First and foremost, let's say this. Anytime you're at a legitimate zone of supply, a legitimate zone of demand, a legitimate zone of support, price will show that with the price action. Okay, you will see evidence of these kinds of candles. We call them bullish hammer candles. They have large wicks to the downside. You spend very little time at true levels of demand because the buyers don't give you time. They're buying up the supply as soon as it hits. Okay, so again, staying on the 4-hourly time frame for this analysis, let's look and see what does it look like when price comes into this purported zone of demand that the influencers, the big accounts, will have you believe is our reversal point. You have a cluster of price action that's not that compelling. You have one candle that shows maybe some evidence of a bullish hammer candle, but that same candle is a doji, meaning there's a big wick to the top as well. You have no bullish hammer candles at this purported demand level. More likely than not, it's more supply. It's a resupply zone, okay? Which means you're likely to see in the coming hours for Bitcoin in the immediate short term a break of this M-top. Okay, and how do these patterns break down? Remember, they don't just break down. No, you got to break down and retest. So you're likely to see a breakdown and then a retest of the pattern to confirm the pattern, then a larger breakdown. So that being said, I'm seeing Bitcoin break down to around the $109,000 level. So it's about a 5% move from where we're at right now. And then retest this M-top as a confirmed bullish reversal pattern. In so doing, you would also be retesting the midline of this 3+ day downtrend channel. Okay, so this is what I'm seeing. This is a likely scenario in the immediate short term for Bitcoin. Your stochastic RSI momentum indicators telling you as much on the 4-hourly time frame. You've expended a lot of energy getting into overbought territory with just this measly move of a few percent, right? Going into the hourly time frame, you see even more evidence of why this is not anything but a counter correction, right? One of many counter corrections that you can see in this trend that we've been in for about a week. Look, corrective patterns, as you know, if you follow this channel, they come in flavors of 3. Look at this, A, B, C. This is a flavor of 3 corrective pattern. In no way, shape, or form is it a complete reversal. Furthermore, on the hourly time frame, you see evidence of rejection at resistance. Remember, this is just a 3-day resistance. This is not huge. But when price hit the top of this 3-day channel, look what happened. You got a very strong rejection here with this inverse hammer candle, or whatever you call it, a spinning top. That's what they call it, a spinning top. That's evidence of strong selling price action, right? And you got a little bit more, right? Every time you get into this zone, you get strong rejections. You just get a series of strong rejections. Price tried to break many times over the course of many hours and failed. This is not convincing. You're likely to break down from it. And actually, looking at the stochastic RSI and the momentum indicator on the hourly time frame, you're showing as much. You're completely overbought and you're crossing bearish, and you're likely to reverse course. Again, you're targeting 109, a 5% move to the downside at the very least. All right, so that's Bitcoin. This is why all the claims that you see on Twitter of, bear market is over, CryptoFace says, using his market strategy or whatever his indicator's called. Look, I don't care how many green, red dots you post. These indicators are always lagging. There's nothing more important than reading raw data. Price action is raw data. Everything else is derivative. You want to be able to read price action because the information's there for you. If you can read it properly, you'll have an edge over anybody using any kinds of indicators, right? People are saying, Shardy B is telling you, it's a proper bottom on Bitcoin, right? Now let's get into Ethereum. So yesterday we looked at MicroStrategy and I posed the question, is MicroStrategy in trouble, right? And I talked about what I called capitulative retests, the type of strong deleveraging event that we saw in 2010, 2015, and 2020, right before we went into the bull market. And if you know anything about my high time frame trade thesis, is we are steps away from a bull market. We have yet to go into Bitcoin's bull market, but that massive deleveraging event down to my level of 55K, which I've been sharing publicly for hundreds of days, is that deleveraging event that takes us down into the next major demand zone that Bitcoin needs to go to catapult into the next bull market. So that being said, I pose the question, is Tom Lee, basically Ethereum's Michael Saylor, is he in trouble? Because he is chairman of Bitmine, which was heretofore a simple, Bitcoin mining company, but has now pivoted into an Ethereum treasury because their investment thesis is that, the way Michael Saylor sees Bitcoin, Ethereum's that much more valuable, and just amassing as much Ethereum as possible is going to actually yield a much higher return on investment than even you could with Bitcoin, which is a sound strategy in my estimation. I think it's a great strategy. So what has Tom Lee done? He has, through his fund Bitmine, bought a ton of Ethereum. At this point, from what I've read, they are at over $5.5 billion worth of Ethereum. Most of that purchased, I think, just a couple months back. So he's up on his trade, right? He's up on his trade. For those of you who don't know what Tom Lee looks like, by the way, where's this? Let me just get a picture of Tom Lee. Here we go. That's Tom Lee. He bought Ethereum. Let's look at Ethereum's chart, okay? And let me just say this: I'm not going to divulge my high time frame Ethereum analysis. In all fairness to my clients, this is something that I've shared in a private video with my clients maybe a few weeks back, and that's complete with my my downside target, my final downside target for Ethereum in Ethereum's bear market. I'm not going to divulge that, but I'm just going to say this much. So Tom Lee represents a huge part. Why am I even talking about this? It's because every single time we experience what I call the massive deleveraging event, the capitulative retest, there are there's there are always consequences to people, to funds, to institutions that are that don't manage risk well. I don't know anything about Bitmine in depth. I know that their average buy is around 3,700 or something like that. I know that they have a large swath of Ethereum holdings, and that they hold right now approximately 1% of the total supply, which is significant. But I know that there's always collateral damage in these deleveraging events, and when you have too big to fail actors like a MicroStrategy, like a Bitmine, it's going to have repercussions on the rest of the market. This is why we look at it. This is why I'm talking about it. If Tom Lee fucked up, you're going to know. Whether you know who he is, whether you know what Bitmine is, who Bitmine is, you're going to find out. Just like you know about Quadriga CX, just like you know about Luna, Terra Luna, just like you know about FTX. There are going to be repercussions for his trade. Whether you know him or of him or are invested or not, you are going to know about this because it's going to affect you in some way, shape, or form. This is why I'm talking about it. So, looking at Ethereum right now, remember, Tom Lee's average buy, according to, my research, is around here, okay? And he bought about 250 million more around that level, or even after that level. So let's just say he's bought around this area. When I went on Twitter today, just messing around, I was shocked by his tweet. So Tom Lee tweeted, ETH inflected at 4,064 Tuesday evening, right on schedule of midweek, as called by Mark Newton, CMT. Mark Newton is his quant, the guy who does what I do for y'all, but he's paid a lot more for his opinions. And, he's congratulating him, and he's saying, there's a bunch of other tweets. You can go ahead and read them. He's saying, that's the bottom, that's it, expect a lot more upside for Ethereum. That was a healthy retracement. We were looking for that. We expected it. Now it's done. And mind you, this is the guy who, whenever he wants, he buys hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Ethereum. So if he says he wants to see an inflection point here, you're going to see it in the charts. But that doesn't necessarily mean that even with $100 million or many hundreds of millions of dollars, you can change this. This is what people don't get, that follow people with size slavishly. People with size is a way we denote people with big portfolios. I always say, it doesn't matter if you have $100 or $1,000 or $100 million or $100 billion worth of a portfolio. We all deal with the same things: when to buy, when to sell, should you leverage or not. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about when I say leverage, MicroStrategy leveraged. Of course they did. Understand what leveraging means. Leveraging means borrowing money to build your position. Unless Tom Lee and Michael Saylor use their personal funds, their pocket money, the money under their mattress, to fund MicroStrategy, or MicroStrategy's revenue or Bitmine's revenue to fund their purchases of Bitcoin and Ethereum respectively. If they borrowed money, they're leveraged, meaning they owe somebody, and somebody's very interested at their performance. That's what we call leveraging. We all deal with whether to leverage or not. It doesn't matter the size of your portfolio. And again, mismanaging leveraged portfolios shows a lot faster than when they're not leveraged. So if I'm correct, and we're dealing with what Bitcoin is likely facing in a massive deleveraging event, going to back to our level of demand around 55 to 60K. You're likely going to see it in Ethereum, especially because just looking at this weekly chart, this purple box represents 1500 days worth of resistance. I understand Tom Lee's reasoning, right? His overall global, universal, just high level reasoning is sound. You will make a lot more money building a treasury of Ethereum rather than a treasury of Bitcoin. That's also my reasoning in investing in altcoins and not Bitcoin in a bull market. But you gotta invest at the right time. Because if you think this is breaking out and that was it, and this is a completed consolidation, and this is a completed move, then sure, you can buy here. But buying resistance is always very dangerous, especially if you're buying with size. I don't know, I do know who his quant is, but I don't know who greenlit the purchase of $250 million worth of Ethereum there, but I don't think they're going to have a job for much longer, if I'm correct. Because what you're seeing here likely is a 1500-day resistance level, which the sell, understand, Tom Lee doesn't have all the money to break this. He doesn't. That's the beauty of technical analysis. I don't care how much money you have, you're not breaking this chart. You literally have to break the chart. High probability is this rejects because it's 1500 days worth of resistance, and because the amount of selling pressure that's amassed at this level far outweighs whatever Tom Lee and his billions of dollars can do. That's just the truth. He doesn't have enough money. Tom Lee and Bitmine do not have enough money to break this chart. That is the beauty of technical analysis. All right? So when I pose the question, is Tom Lee and Bitmine in trouble? If I'm correct, they are. And I don't care if it's spot, because if you bought spot using somebody else's money, that's leverage. All right? So that is my whole analysis on, Tom Lee and Bitmine. And, it goes back to, it doesn't matter if it's, a few people on here on social media with a big following, big accounts, private individuals telling you to buy, saying there's a green dot here and there. Doesn't matter if it's them or a guy with literally billions of dollars of assets under management. Do your own fucking research, please. Do your own research and stick to your fundamentals. Sell at resistance or be very cautious buying at resistance, and be bullish at support. Right? Stick to that. That's a winning strategy. You need nothing else. All right? Not to make this video too long, let's look at what the TOTAL3 is saying. All right, we're going to stick on the small time frames because that's what we did our Ethereum and our Bitcoin analysis on. I did show you the 4-hourly on Ethereum, right? I believe I did. Let me just check. We did. Let's see. Yeah, I think I said, no, maybe I didn't, but basically Ethereum is in a downtrend. It's been in a downtrend for about 7 days, and it's been in this channel, and basically it's the same thing as Bitcoin. You're dealing with a larger downtrend, right? 7 days, not long, but you're dealing with counter trends, counter corrections, that each and every one of them find their end at the resistance of the 7-day channel you've been in. That's just a small time frame read, right? But I don't understand why a serious analyst, a serious hedge fund trader that has a position, understand, there's scalping, there's swing trading, there's position trading. Position trading is what you do. High time frames, very large accounts, very, very big size. You position trade. You're more concerned with what's happening on the weekly. You don't check intraday charts. So when I saw Tom Lee post that intraday read, I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? That is so strange. You have $5.5 billion of this stuff under management, and you're posting an intraday chart. if you are invested in Bitmine or you are in any way exposed to that trade, I would be concerned. I do not want my quant with 5.5 billion under management looking at the intraday time frame and celebrating at what is this, a 6% bounce, 7% bounce. No, that's scary. But you can understand, if my analysis is correct, you can understand if my buy is here, then that makes sense. I'm starting to sweat. If if my buy is right here and I just took 2 seconds to do my high time frame analysis, yeah, I'm starting to sweat. And I'm probably going into the small time frames. He's like us, no different. It doesn't matter if you have $1,000 trading portfolio, $100,000 trading portfolio. When you make these mistakes, they're mistakes. And when you start to sweat, it shows. We all bleed the same. That's the moral of the story. Stop lionizing these people. Stop putting people on pedestals. Do your own fucking research and respect resistance and, respect support. Get familiar with levels that you should buy and levels where you should sell. Okay? Doesn't matter how big these assets or these managers are, these hedge fund traders are. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. We've seen them historically. Go look at Quadriga. Go look at FTX. Go look at Terra Luna. Go look at so many examples of mismanaged massive funds where risk was poorly managed. Deleveraging events will catch them. Okay, so looking at the total 3, what are the altcoins saying? Remember, total 3 is all the altcoins minus Ethereum. You have your classic head and shoulders bearish reversal pattern. Even more, you have a breakdown and retest. There is no such thing as a confirmation in technical analysis, I like to say, but the closest thing that comes to that is the breakdown and retest of any pattern, any major pattern. So here, that head and shoulders broken down and retested is likely to then continue and play out. So you're looking at this height superimposed from the site of breakout, giving you your first wave to the downside, right? Confluent with this bottom, this swing bottom here, 923, 925 billion in for altcoins. So I'm looking at an altcoin drawdown from here of about 10%, and that checks out because we saw moments earlier Bitcoin's likely to come down 5%, Ethereum, or sorry, not Ethereum, but altcoins collectively, as per this total 3, come down about twice as much. That checks out. This is what you typically see. Last but not least, Bitcoin dominance. This indicator tells us a lot about what's likely happening in the cryptocurrency space, and especially what Bitcoin is doing vis-a-vis altcoins and vice versa. So we just saw on Bitcoin's chart, we're likely going to get a small pullback. We just saw on the total 3 chart, we're likely going to get a pullback that's twice as large. What's Bitcoin dominance doing? Well, Bitcoin dominance for a few days now has been in this level of consolidation. Looks like an accumulation to me. A bunch of consolidation in a channel that's likely going to move up. If that's true, it's exactly echoing what we just saw in the total 3 chart, exactly echoing what we saw in Bitcoin's chart. Bitcoin dominance going up means Bitcoin's going to go down and altcoins are going to go down a bit more, okay? So everything is likely going to draw down just a bit at first, but even more later on. So, all of this checks out, and I'd be very careful once again. Just, you can follow them, but just parroting what big accounts say, what people very, very highly invested in this market say, just because they have a lot on the line. Big players have fallen. in the past and they will fall in the future. So do your own research. Be very careful, guys. That's all my analysis. Hope that was helpful, useful. Like, share, and subscribe. If you're interested in trading with me, check out my crypto portfolio mentorship and consultation service. You can sign up for that at the pinned comment below. I help you choose up to 5 altcoins that are going to do sustained upside in this alt season, and I help you identify levels of support and resistance to maximize your portfolio. So you can sign up for that at the pinned comment below. If you're only interested in my looking at one asset or one commodity, it doesn't even have to be crypto, but one thing to analyze, that is my single asset analysis service or product, and you can sign up for that, or you can order that below also at the pinned comment. As soon as I get payment, I will have the pre-recorded analysis to you within 24 hours. And then last but not least, check out BTC.D, the exchange partner for the channel. They're offering 10% cash back on any new deposits, okay? And the maximum cash back you can get is $10,000. That's obviously for a $100,000 deposit for new users, new depositors to the exchange. That's it for me, guys. Hope this was good, and I'll see you later. Bye.
I vocalize, too deep to localize, even when I'm right on the surface. You act surprised how I work this, but I can't lie. Many a good alibi. I'll catch you later. Visions are vividly enhanced with emphasis and amethyst to develop morale advantages which help us manifest magnanimous. We body vitals like evangelists. So listen when you're dealing with people who be revealing premonitions with precision. At least that's what I'm aiming at for now. I speak the language of the world, meandering throughout the crowd. Used to feel safe to say anything, but now it's a risk. It's hard for me to let go when all I can do is reminisce. Gone like the wind, here's where I began.